more deadly.
We just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19 that had passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down.
We are following this breaking news, startling new revelations about when and what President Trump allegedly knew about the coronavirus. According to a new book by Bob Woodward, the president knew of the dangers of the coronavirus weeks before the first death in the U.S. And instead of warning the American people, the president decided to play the virus down.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
He lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was.
You know, so this is deadly stuff.
And while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you...
Sure, I want you to
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone.
This is a pandemic that has now taken the lives of nearly 200,000 Americans, and it appears, based on these recordings, that the president was deliberately downplaying this. Now, the White House press secretary insisted that the president has not lied to the American people. We followed up several times. She insists that he was just trying to keep the calm. It is unclear, though, how distorting the facts that he was receiving from his health advisors, distorting the facts that he, according to these interviews, were receiving from his national security advisors. It's unclear how that was supposed to lead to calm.
And when you set these comments of the president up and compare them with what he said publicly about the virus, how do they compare?
That's right. Back in February, he's apparently telling Woodward that this is more deadly than the flu, even though around that time he was tweeting that it was actually under control and that it was not worse than the flu. And it took him about a month and a half before he declared a national emergency. Once again, the first interview that I'm referring to here happened in early February. It continues to appear that February is sort of a lost month when it comes to the Trump administration's response to COVID. I've asked the president, I've asked administration officials, what did you do in the month of February? And it appears, even though the president was being clearly told by his advisors that this was a deadly threat, one of the biggest challenges he was going to face, that the administration did not take any real concrete action during the month of February and continue to, in the president's own words, play it down.
A confession about downplaying the coronavirus? It barely gets any attention compared to the hours and hours of pro-Trump talk on Fox. For the so-called Fox and friends, this is the business model. They don't want to tell the audience something the audience doesn't want to hear. So they end up making excuses for Trump, covering up the news instead of covering the news. A complete dismissal of Bob Woodward's bombshell in Rage.
It's a booger dressed as a bombshell. It's nothing.
Mostly, the network just changed the subject.
What was Joe Biden doing?
They distracted.
President Trump started off the day with a nomination.
They downplayed.
The timing of this is interesting.
And they defended the comments.
Let's make one thing perfectly clear. President Trump has never misled or distorted the truth about this deadly disease.
Hannity defends the comments by lying about them, denying what we all can hear on the tape. Even Trump admits what he did.
Writes the president, because he knew they were good and proper answers. Calm, no panic. That last line there, Neil, is part of the president's defense.
I'm a cheerleader for this country. I love our country. And I don't want people to be frightened. I don't want to create panic, as you say. And certainly I'm not going to drive this country or the world into a frenzy. We want to show confidence. We want to show strength.
You know, this is really nothing to do with anything, but why did the president agree to these multiple sit-downs with Bob Woodward? 18 of them. I guess they went on for hours and hours and hours. especially after the first book that was none too friendly, if you're able to
None too friendly. None too friendly. The first book, and President Trump, one of his complaints after that first book came out was why there weren't really any direct conversations between the president and Bob Woodward. You'll remember there was that conversation that was released afterwards between President Trump and Bob Woodward, in which he said, "Hey, why didn't you come to me?" So for a second book, the president sat down with Woodward, 18 different occasions, you're right, over the course of 9 hours when you add it all up. Still, though, there's a lot of questions inside this White House as to why the president would do such a thing, especially since this book is being released so close to the election. The president clearly felt as if he could have Woodward portray a positive view of this White House. Now, though, the president is describing this as a political hit job, even though he sat down and there are tapes and there are transcripts of those very conversations.
And a lot of these people on Fox News, they'll dismiss the need for masks and social distancing, but when it comes to their own health, they make sure they wear a mask. For example, Laura Ingraham wears masks. And here's Trump at one of his rallies making fun of Laura Ingraham for wearing a mask.
Laura, where is she? Where is Laura? I can't recognize you. Is that a mask? No way. Are you wearing a mask? I've never seen her in a mask. Look at you. Whoa, she's being very politically correct. Whoa. Whoa, I've never seen. Laura Ingraham, she's fantastic. Thank you, Laura. Ah, yes, I've never seen that before.
He doesn't take this pandemic seriously.
I just left a country. I just left a state that locked down. I left 2 of them, and they're not happy about it, I'll tell you right now. You know what's going to happen to them on November 4th, the day after? They're going to say, all right, we'll open up now. That's why they're locking down. But we're going to have a safe vaccine that ends the pandemic. Without it, it's rounding the turn. I say it drives them crazy. It's rounding the turn. Because all they want to do, you turn on the news, COVID, 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 COVID. Would like to talk about COVID, and then next turn. Here's what happens, November 4th. You won't hear too much about it. You won't hear too much about it. Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election. I appreciate the advice.
Hospitals across the country are low on protective equipment.
And one of Trump's biggest betrayals was refusing to use the Defense Production Act to bring production of N95 masks here in the United States. He has the power with the DPA to bring all production of N95 masks back from China into the United States. But he refuses to do it because he's serving powerful business interests. There's more information about that in the video description.
Just 2 weeks ago, a Government Accountability Office report came out that actually confirmed that there are persistent shortages.
A recent survey of nurses around the country found that 2/3 of them were still reusing N95 masks, more than half of them for 5 days or more.
It didn't need to be this way. This is an administration that had policies, procedures, tools, plans, checklists, advance warning, all of those things, and it appears to have used almost none of it. This is such a historical failure on so many levels.
The president says he's a wartime president. This is a war against his virus. He should act like a wartime president. He has been very slow to act on a whole range of things. For example, he still hasn't fully invoked the Defense Production Act, which I called for a while ago. He finally did with General Motors after a little roundabout in terms of building ventilators. What about the masks? He can do that by the Defense Production Act right now. He could have done it yesterday, a week ago, 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. They're in short supply. And our first responders are literally risking and some losing their lives to try to help the American people.
What do we need? PPE! We are demanding PPE so that we can protect ourselves and our families.